Okay, welcome to class. And I've asked Hannah if she'll say the prayer for us. Thank you, Hannah.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We ask you to please bless that we will have a good time in class and that the right things will come to our minds to be able to discuss. And please bless that we will have a good day today in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks so much. Okay, let's get some things over with for a minute. So today is the first week in April. And so we have, after today, we'll have 3 more classes. And I want everyone to mark that on the 26th is the last day of class. However, I have oral finals for my humanities class that day, and I'm trying to figure out, how I can work around it because I've got to do those oral finals. So I am thinking that we may have our last class on the 24th of April, which is a Tuesday. Do Tuesdays around 8:30 or 9 work for any of you, do you think? Okay, so Jacoby, you're all right with it? Lucy, was that a hand up saying you're okay with it?
So if it starts at 8:30, I can do it, but I have piano at 10:30 and I have to leave at 9:30, so.
Perfect. So let's do it at 8:30. Okay, and then I guess it depends on Lily too. But what I will do is in the assignments, I have Gettysburg. We're going to discuss Gettysburg, but I have it to be due on Wednesday so that we could discuss it on Thursday of the 26th. But I'm going to change that so that you finish it by the 23rd. So that means we're looking at 17 more days, so 2.5 weeks to get Gettysburg read. But it's not very thick. It's like our other books. I think it's right there on my bookshelf over here. So if you have not started Gettysburg, get going on that. It should be a really good, solid foundation. ¿Puedes tú porque estoy hablando? She's asking me if I can close the door, but I'm asking her if she'll close it because I'm talking and she's not talking. So foundation of what we're studying. And you know what? We are listening to lectures that are so much about war that it would be nice to have that book to read to kind of, there'll be war in that book too, but there's going to be some other storylines to it. So it should be good. So I will change those dates on Canvas, and thank you for dealing with me yesterday and today. Our play was fun. And anyway, how was everybody's spring break? I guess we kind of talked about it in writing class. Good. Excellent. All right. The next thing I wanted to say, okay, so we're going to be working on lesson 23 this week, 24 the next week, 25 the next week, and then the last week, which is going to be on Tuesday the 24th, we are not only going to be talking about Gettysburg, but also a little bit about that lesson 26. So anyway, okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about is taking notes. And I know we talked about it at the very beginning of class in the fall. But I wanted to ask, how do you take notes? Can I have everybody share what you do to take notes? And why it's important to take notes? So let's have everybody share, whoever wants to come on first. Lucy, you're moving to a quieter room so that you can talk, right? Okay, go ahead, Lucy.
So I always write down the points that they have, like the words on the video that they already have written down, and I write down about them because I'm pretty sure they write them because they're important. And then I also just write down anything that sticks out to me. And I recently started like writing the questions down for the assignments in my notes, and then I write down what I'm going to say so I just have that while I'm watching the video.
Oh, cool. So if I have it right, let me see. I've decided I'm going to share my screen a little bit and maybe write down what you do. So note taking, you write down the words on the screen and a little bit about them because you feel that if they have them there, they must be important, right? And then another thing you do is you write down the Canvas questions and write how you will respond to them, right? And then you've got what the lecture says, and you've also got what the assignment questions are. And those you keep in a notebook. Do you write digitally or do you handwrite them?
I want them in Google Docs.
What's that? Oh, Google Doc. Okay, so it's digitally. Okay. Okay, good. So Hannah and Jacoby, gosh, I wonder where Lily is. What are some things that you do for note taking?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, Sylvia had her hand up. She can go.
Okay, Jacoby.
So I kind of do what Lucy does, but I put it in an actual notebook. So I like type my questions up every week and put them in my notebook.
So is your notebook like handwriting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I just mostly do the points that he gives, and then I write a little bit about them like Lucy does.
Awesome. Good. That's great. And then you're practicing your handwriting too. Good. Okay, Hannah.
Okay, so I wasn't really taking notes. I was just writing down the answers to the questions that I needed to do. But I'm starting to take notes, and I do them on Google Docs.
Cool. Okay. And we've got all those up there already, so that's great. And you remember that I used to handwrite everything, and I had these notebooks that I have, and now I'm writing them digitally. And oh, here's Lily. Yay. I'm glad you're here with us, Lily. We're just kind of talking about how we take notes for class. Now, my next question is, and I'd like everybody to answer, is how has note-taking helped you? In what ways has note-taking helped you? Who would like to go? Okay, Jacoby.
I think note taking has helped me like understand it better. Like if I listen to it and then like have notes, it can help me define what he's actually saying.
Did you say listen or remember?
Remember.
Okay. Good. Okay, who else? Oh, Lily.
I think that note taking has helped me like really think about it and like study it.
Oh, good. So it's helped you kind of go deeper, maybe? Good. Who's next? Okay, Lucy.
So I think that my notes also help me to remember, but I think it makes it more personal. So I'm writing down what I feel about it instead of just remembering it how he did it, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so those are two things. Remember, maybe, are you saying remember what he thinks about it and then have your own personal opinion of what you think about it? Is that what you're kind of saying? His opinion, whoops, and differentiating with my opinion. So then you've got two ideas down there. Awesome. And sometimes I can see what you're doing because sometimes he has an opinion that is according to his worldview. And do you know what I mean when I say worldview? Does anybody know? Thumbs up. If you don't know, let's talk about it in a few minutes. So one person knows what worldview is. Okay, Jacoby. All right, we'll talk about worldview a little bit after this. But so you've got his opinion according to his worldview and your opinion according to your worldview. Good. Let me write this down so I remember that we were going to talk about worldview because this is super important. Good. Let's see, Hannah, how has note-taking helped you?
Okay, so I haven't really done it yet. I did one yesterday, but I'm working on it. It's kind of hard.
Note-taking is hard. It's a new skill. I remember when I didn't take notes. I remember having to go through that process. So maybe, try to observe in the next month or so how note-taking has helped you. Maybe I'm going to say it is a hurdle to jump over, right? Let's watch and observe how we feel after jumping over it. Good. I just have to open up. Oops, I didn't mean to stop sharing. I meant to open up the chat to see. Oh, Lillian knows what worldview is. Okay, all right. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, let's just talk about worldview for a minute. So, we've got a few people that know some ideas of what a worldview is. Give me some of your thoughts of what a worldview is. Jacoby?
Their opinions.
Okay, yeah, they are opinions, but it's actually a little bit more even. Lily, what do you know?
I think it's like the way that they see a situation, or because everybody is in a different view of a certain situation, isn't it? Like how this person saw that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's even more than that though, but that's really good. Let's see. Lucy, I think you had your hand up, and then Hannah.
Obviously,
Oops. Oh,
the
there
way
you.
that people see the world, but it's like, what's the word? It's like their philosophy of life, I guess.
We're getting closer. Yep. Philosophy of life. Hannah, what do you want to add to that?
It could be influenced by his religion, like his view of how things go.
Yes. By religion. So, oh goodness, G. Okay. Yes, it is actually, a worldview is beliefs. Beliefs. Okay. So, yes. And when we have a belief in Jesus Christ and in the true gospel, then really we don't have opinions. We have a testimony, right? But he feels like he has a testimony of his religion too. But we see it as just an opinion. We also, just like Lily says, he sees the situation with his view of how he believes. Thanks, Hannah. Sorry about that. And like Lucy said, it is his philosophy of life. And by the way, remember what philosophy means? Philo equals love, and Sophie equals wisdom. So it's the love of wisdom. So his love of wisdom of his life. So it is philosophy of life, and it's all of these things, but it's definitely influenced by religion. So it's the beliefs. Let's really quickly, types of worldview. And the reason why I'm going down this road is because you are going to have lectures in your life with people who are not of our worldview, not of our faith. And it's really important that you recognize, oh, this is his worldview. Okay, I can still like him. I can still listen to him and think about what he thinks. But I'm going to build my worldview better by reading the scriptures, studying the prophets, and doing those things that are going to build mine so that I'm so strong and built upon the rock that when the fiery darts of Satan and the whirlwinds that carry me, that are found in Helaman 5:12. I'm just going to put this down. Helaman 5:12. It talks about building upon the rock. You know, the rains came down and the floods came up. Building upon the rock, so that when all these other worldviews come our way, their whirlwinds and their fiery darts, that we can stand strong and be on this rock. So the types of worldview we've got are humanist or humanism, which is basically humanism. There we go. Which is based on the power of man, not God. Okay. There's other ones that maybe I can bring up next week because I've got a book that has a lot of them. There is communism, which believes that all men should be in common by force. Okay, doesn't work. It's Satan's plan. But there's several, and then of course Latter-day Saint. I should put, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But there's several. But as we talk about them, and I'm going to talk about them next week because I didn't know we were going to get into this, so I wasn't prepared. So when I get my book out, we'll talk about types of worldview next week because we have some time. I feel like I don't want to talk a whole hour on war because you've just listened to a whole bunch of lectures about war. So next week, remind me, if any of you think about worldviews in the week, just send me a little text or an email and say, hey, Mrs. Greenman, are you studying the worldviews? So I can be prepared for that. because I think it's important that we know that. Okay, so as we go on now, we've talked about note-taking, we've talked about Gettysburg. Oh, by the way, let's say this one more time for Lily. Gettysburg, the book, we're going to discuss on the 24th. Okay, Lily, when you were not here, I asked everybody if we could change the date. Let me stop sharing and share my whole screen so you can see everything. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this. Do you see the calendar? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, so today is the 6th. Next week will be the 12th when we have our class, and then the 19th we'll have our class. But then the next Thursday, our last class, is actually the day I'm doing oral finals in my humanities class. And we could either meet at 7 o'clock in the morning, which I don't feel like we should do, or we can move it up to the 24th, which is a study day for my, what is it called? For my humanities class. And we don't have a writing class that day. So I've asked everybody if we could have class at 8:30 on the 24th, and the rest of them could do that. What about you, Lily? Do you think Tuesday morning at 8:30 would work for you for our last class?
I think so.
Okay, good. So then I'm going to change the Canvas assignments so that the Gettysburg needs to be read by this day, which leaves us about 17 days to get that done. So make sure you find that Gettysburg and book and get ready to read it. Okay. I think that's all of those things that we're going to talk about. And now let's go into some of your thoughts. Your thoughts for this week's lectures. This week's lectures. So open your notes. This is when I feel like notes are so helpful. So I've got my notes right here. I just kind of wanted to show you how I do them since I didn't get a chance. So I do lesson 23, Dave Raymond, and I just, here's 23.1 and the name of it. And then I guess I kind of use these bullets. I don't know if anybody uses bullets like this. The paradox, faith versus justice. Now I've got faith and then these bullets and justice and these bullets. Since we're talking about war, we might as well use bullets, right? And then I go down the same thing, 23.2. And then it's pretty easy for me to find ideas. And then another thing about doing something digitally is, look, I can search in the document, and I'm going to search a word that I want to talk about this week because I've had a couple of people with questions about this. I'm going to use cautious. Okay, so now I can find everything in this document about cautious. He was too cautious. Albert Sidney Johnston was cautious. George McClellan was overly cautious. McDowell was cautious. Do you see how he's saying? And all of these men belonged to the South. And I always thought cautious was a good word. So anyway, that's why I like to use a document because I can search with cautious. And by the way, Google Docs, you can do the same thing. You can search. All right, I'm going to stop sharing so you don't have to see my entire screen. And I do want to talk about cautious, but let's listen to some of your things first. I do want to share my one screen. So here we'll go down. I'm going to put the word cautious because I want to talk about that. Okay, who would like to share something that stuck out to you in this week's lectures? And take a minute to look at your notes, if you will.
Couldn't we talk about the first lecture?
You bet. What part of it are you thinking?
The paradox.
Ooh, yes. Okay. So the paradox of faith and justice. That's a new word. And I did put in the Canvas kind of a little overview of what paradox means. What do you remember that paradox means first? Anybody? Lucy. Can you unmute yourself, or do you want me to do it? I'm going to unmute you. Try talking now. No, I can't hear you. I'm going to mute you and unmute you. Huh. That's crazy. A paradox. Lucy on her computer and internet that should work. Two things that are not working right now, but that should work, right? Okay, anybody else? You know what you might want to do, Lucy, is leave and then come back and see if that helps. Okay, we'll do that. Okay, anybody understand what paradox might mean before she comes back? Okay, try again, Lucy. See if we can hear you. Oh, darn. That's sad. Okay.
If you go to the bottom and there's that little menu, there's like this arrow by the mute button, and it should, if you use sometimes if you use headphones, then you can choose headphones and it'll work better.
Oh, Hannah, thank you. Does that work? Okay, I'm just going to say, this is another, whoops, can't work, doesn't work there. Contradiction. So if you kind of know what a contradiction is, whoops, something just is funny on my computer and I can't type. Okay, so something, it's also something that seems absurd or doesn't really go together. I loved how some of you answered this, though. So a contradiction is when you've got two things that kind of counteract with each other. Okay. Let's go here. I think I can close this out. Examples of paradox for middle school students. How's that? Let's see. So somebody want to read this? Hannah, do you want to read that since this was your question? I can't hear you.
Sure, sorry.
Okay.
A paradox is a statement that may seem absurd or contradictory, but yet it can be true, or at least make sense. Paradoxes are often contrary to what is commonly believed and so play an important part in furthering our understanding in literature and everyday life, or they can simply be entertaining brain teasers.
Thank you. So let's go back to this and add to it. It's a contradiction, something seems absurd or doesn't really go together, but can be true. Okay? So let's go back to this and see if, Jacoby, you're next. Would you read this?
Yeah. It is often easier to explain what a paradox is by giving an example. A paradox is used to challenge the mind and make you think about the statement in a new way. A paradox is often used to
Intrigue.
intrigue and question common thoughts. Take the statement, less is more. This statement uses two opposite words that contradict one another. How can less be more? The concept behind this statement is that what is less
Complicated.
complicated is often more appreciated.
Haha. I've said that before. Less is more. How else can this, and Lucy, whenever you want to say something, just type in the chat box because we want to hear from you too. How is less more? You got less and more, and they don't seem to be true, right? They're a paradox. They're contradictory. It seems absurd to say them. They don't really go together, but they can be true in certain situations. How can less be more? Okay, I'm going to open up the chat. Oh, you have one too, Jacoby. Okay, good. Let's tell in just a minute. So, does anybody know how less can be more in one way? Lily.
For dance, I actually use that a lot because sometimes less movement can be more powerful to the judges and more moving. Sometimes like a lower movement or not so big movement can be more powerful or more effective.
Awesome. Good. I love that. I love how you're bringing your own life's experiences into this. Good. Hannah would know this one. I say it all the time. Less sugar is more healthy.
I don't hear that very often.
Well, the less we eat of it, the more healthy we will be. But okay, I'll say it more then. What's another way? One more way, if somebody can think of it. Should it be less school work can be more healthy? Does that work? Jacoby saying no. That must be two words. It was screaming at me with that little red line. I don't know. What if you are, yes, Lily, it depends. What if you are spending all of your waking hours studying, and not moving your body? You little dancer, you, Lily. Then yes, it would work. So I guess you just got to take that paradox and just kind of got to use it the way you need to use it. Okay, let's go to Jacoby's. Lily first, and then we'll go to Jacoby's paradox.
Oh, I just wanted to say one thing about that. I have heard recently, and I've seen studies that people that are assigned less homework and less school hours actually have higher gradings. And I just thought that was cool. So
Awesome. Yeah, I think there's lots of interesting things in this less is more paradox. Excellent. All right, Jacoby.
So my mom is listening to Robin Hood,
Uh-huh.
and you know the bear Little John?
Yes.
Thinking that's a paradox because he's not little. He's very big.
Yes. There we go. I love that. So his name is a paradox. Good. Yeah, and I sometimes tell people that my baby is Hannah. My baby is Hannah. But she's not a baby
I hear
anymore.
very often.
Yeah, not very nice. It would be better to say, she is my caboose. But when people know that Hannah is my baby, they know, they can see that it's a paradox, and they know that she is my last one. So, but yeah, this is a little more true, isn't it, Hannah? Good. Okay, so now we know what a paradox is. So now let's go down to, let's take this to faith. Faith and justice. Ooh, the South had faith that they were doing the right thing by leaving the Union. And the North had faith that God was telling them to keep the Union together. So faith is different in those two realms, isn't it? Or is it the same? And then there's justice. The North felt that the justice, that the South should be brought to justice and be brought to the Union. And the South felt like the North needed to be brought to justice and recognize that they needed to separate. What comes to your mind when you think of all this? Oh my gosh, everybody's black or either gone. Where are we all? Oh, there's Hannah, there's Jacoby. Okay, Lilia.
I think that justice and faith are different because faith is more like a belief and justice is usually an action, and justice is like correcting what you think is wrong, and faith is acting on something, of like acting on a belief, basically.
I like that. And justice, you said really good words, but they've left me.
Correcting what you think is wrong.
Oh yeah. But look at this, interesting. What you think is wrong is also a belief. Acting on that belief. So faith and justice they are a paradox. They seem to be different, but they work together, don't they? Faith and justice work together. And let's look at this a little bit. The faith in the South was that they needed to separate from the Union. And the justice was that they needed to separate from the Union. They needed to correct the North about that, right? So aren't faith and justice working together for the South? Lily.
Yeah, I think so. Like, now I see what you mean, that you have to have faith in what you're doing for it to be justice. You have to have faith that it's the right thing to do. And I know that there's sometimes that justice can not actually be justice but revenge, but some people still have faith in it.
Okay.
It could be faith in your justifying actions.
Yes, faith in your justifying actions. Good. Whew. So why is it important to understand the North and the South and their idea of faith and justice? Why is it important to understand this paradox, do you think? Let me ask a different way. Oh, somebody, okay, Lily.
I think that it's important because a lot of times we can mistake having faith in something wrong, or we could, if we don't have faith in it, then it might not be justice.
Good. Sometimes we can mistake something. It's good to understand that what we think, what we believe about a war or our side or our contention, what we believe might be a mistake. And how? Okay, here's another question. I want you to think about this. How is knowing that we could be wrong in our faith and justice, how does that idea of maybe we might be wrong, how does that help us understand the other side? What do you think, Jacoby or Hannah? How does our recognizing that we might be wrong help us understand the other side?
You can have humility.
Yes, understanding that we might be wrong lends humility. Woo! How do you think this would end or bring world peace if all of us could understand that we might be mistaken? Jacoby, what do you think? How might this bring world peace if everyone began to understand they might be wrong in something?
I'm not sure. I think
well, it's a good question to think about. Think about it for a minute and think about as you look at everybody and there's fighting and contention going on, and if each person thought, well, I might be wrong, what would it actually do for that relationship? Yeah, Jacoby.
I think it might make it stronger. Like if you think you're mistaken and the other person was right, you can build off of that, and then like later it can be like a joke to each other or something.
Yeah, good. It builds relationships as we work together. Lily, you've had your hand up for a long time. I'm sorry. What comes to your mind?
Well, I know that whenever I'm arguing with my brother or even with my mom, I at some point, like, sometimes I realize, oh, what I'm saying doesn't really make sense, because I almost go through the thought process now of our other class, like, where's your proofs, where's these things, and I'm like, oh, I can't really find that. And then once I realize that, I can realize that what I have faith in is not right. And so I have to realize and apologize. Yeah.
I love that. Apologize. Good. Good. So this is basically what the South and the North needed to do, that each of them had faith. Each of them wanted justice, but they needed to see what was the very best thing, and they needed to be humble. Okay. I really want to talk about cautious. And I've kind of got to go in about 10 minutes because my doctor's appointment is right at 9. I asked them if I could come a little after 9, and they said yes. So I'm going to cut class about 4 or 5 minutes early and then get to my doctor's appointment 4 or 5 minutes late. So that way I've got a compromise. So we saw in my notes that there was about 5 different leaders in the South, or was it 4, that were overly cautious. Let's put that word. Okay, and I had a couple of you in the Canvas assignment not quite sure what Dave Raymond was saying about being cautious, because is being cautious a good thing? What is, yeah, Jacoby.
I think being cautious sometimes is a good thing, but other times it might be not so good.
Yeah. Let's talk about examples of when it is good. Yes, Jacoby, were you going to say when it is good or when it is bad?
One is good.
Okay.
You can be cautious, like around water with little kids.
Good. Good. Lily.
I think that being cautious in dangerous situations, or in not really dangerous, but being cautious in active situations doesn't really help you, and it may be right at the time, but it might not help you. So it could be right, but it might not help you or others. And I also think that being cautious could apply to my life, and I'm not really like doing something that involves like fighting or anything, so I can be a little bit more cautious, and I can be cautious not of my actions but of my words.
I'm going to even say actions and words to others, right? I like that. And I like what you're saying. Okay, anybody else can think of something of examples when being cautious is good? Any others? These are really good. Now let's think of sometimes to be cautious when it is a bad idea to be cautious. And see, this is going to hurt your brain synapses for a minute, because we don't think of being cautious as a bad thing.
Well, but it could be bad, like if you have to do something like or if you're going on a hike and you're so cautious that you're putting hand sanitizer on your feet and your shoes and the bottom of your shoes just to make sure that they're clean, then it would make you stall and go a lot slower, and then you would miss what you were looking for.
Wow, that's awesome. Hiking and hand sanitizer makes you take too much time, and it's probably going to bother a bunch of other people, right? It's like, oh, please. Okay, good. Lily.
I think that it depends on what your point of view is, because if you are that person, you might not think of it as bad, but as in something that you believe in, or because some people are cautious with certain things and other people think it's bad because we're cautious with our clothes and other people don't believe in that. And I mean, they don't necessarily think it's bad, they just don't necessarily like it. And so I think it's just what your point of view is and how you look at things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if you're cautious in certain situations that people ask you not to be, then you are deliberately disobeying, and that's bad.
Yes, I think anytime it's going to deal with a moral issue, we ought to be cautious, because the Lord has asked us to be cautious. But if, for instance, my family and I went to the White Sands Park, National Park in New Mexico, and White Sands National Park is, I'm going to show you what it looks like. White Sands National Monument, I guess is what it's called. So, well, actually I wanted, okay, so there's all these mountains of white sand. But what's interesting is that people take their sleds and they walk up these really steep hills, and they slide down. See if there's any others. No, there isn't. But they slide down these hills. And the kids were having so much fun. And for some reason, I was afraid. And I didn't want to do it because I was afraid that my body would die. And I was overly cautious, and I was just sitting down on the chair at the bottom of the hill, just watching everybody have a lot of fun. But I was overly cautious because I had fears. But see, this is not a moral issue. So it doesn't matter, right, Lily? I can either do it or not, and I'm not gonna put myself in spiritual danger at all. So when I'm talking about being overly cautious on something, it's usually because of fears. I want to go back to that. So fears make us overly cautious. Let me tell you what happened that day, though. So Edie comes up to me. I think many of you know Hannah's older sister. She said, "Mom, do you remember how you always tell us we need to face our fears? You need to face your fear." And I thought, oh my gosh, she's right. I'm going to face my fear. So I took a sled and I walked up that hill. And by the time I got to the top of the hill, I thought, oh, okay, well, this doesn't look so bad from up here. And I still was a little fearful, and I got on the sled and I went down, and it was slow and fun. And nothing happened like I thought it was going to happen. Nothing. I just had so much fun, and I did it again. But by that time, it was pretty much almost time for us to go. And I realized that I'd missed out because I was overly cautious because of a fear. These 4 or 5 generals that Dave Raymond talked about were overly cautious and did not protect the South like, or do the things that they needed to do to be able to win the war. And I'm glad that they were overly cautious, but we need to remember that when we are overly cautious because of fears, we miss out. We don't do the very best that we can do. So it is my prayer that as you go throughout this week, you look for your own fears and check to see if you're being overly cautious. I'm not telling you to be overly cautious with moral issues. I'm telling you to definitely be cautious and maybe even overly cautious. Well, maybe not, but I'm definitely not talking about moral issues. I'm talking about those things that keep you from doing things that are hard to do. And with that, we will close the class, which we didn't get to talk too much about Gettysburg. I think in today's lecture, you're going to listen to about, and I want you to watch for this, that this was a war that it didn't do much good. Okay. The name of that last lecture is called Appomattox to the End. And it's going to talk about how the war came to an end. It's not a real long lecture like the other ones have been this week. Ooh, long lectures. But it was basically,
And
yeah, go ahead.
in the Gettysburg simulation, or in the Gettysburg War, the North had a lot more ammunition at some points, and the other side had a lot less. We did this simulation for school, but all of the guys were on one side because they had chosen that side from the beginning of the year. We had to do this little, like, riddle, and if we solved it, we could solve it whichever way we wanted to, but that was the side that we had to be on. And so they were the South, but they still won with barely anything. So
Wow. It is interesting. Oh, so the war was a pretty sad ending in many ways, even including the way you're talking about, Hannah, and didn't do much for really helping to make decisions, but some good things came out of it, even though mostly it was all bloodshed, and it was the most horrible war that our country has ever been involved in. And anyway, take good notes. I gotta go, but have a wonderful week. Look for if you're overly cautious or not. Yes.
Wasn't the Gettysburg a battle? It wasn't a war.
Gettysburg was a battle, right?
You just said the biggest war. It was one of the biggest battles, but...
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't explain myself very well. This lecture for today is called Appomattox to the End of the War. And so now I was talking about the war. Yeah. So sorry. Okay. All right. Everyone, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. Make sure you're reading the book Gettysburg. Okay? All right. See you later. I'll stop the recording.